What's going on, everybody? This is Jamie, and welcome to the channel Thrift on Fire. This week, we're going to be doing another episode of Let's Talk About Reselling in Canada. This time, it's with my buddy Scott from Scott Sells Stuff here on YouTube. I will link down below his YouTube, his eBay. I don't think he has Instagram. Get on him about that. He needs to get his Instagram going. Scott does a weekly show every Sunday night on YouTube where they basically talk about reselling and they show items they picked up through the week. He does it with his buddy Adam. Adam is shipping vintage on YouTube and I think pretty much on every platform. Now these guys are super local to me, which is funny because I've just met them recently, but they are Norfolk County boys just like myself. They're both probably about 30 minutes away from me, but we're talking to Scott today, and Scott's gonna let you know a little bit about what he does, his business, how he looks at things, but definitely give Scott a follow here on YouTube. Try to catch one of his shows here on a Sunday night. They are excellent. You will not be disappointed. But let's get into this one now. So we're here with Scott. Scott's actually local to me. He's from Ontario. He's actually, I don't know, I'd say maybe 30 minutes away, maybe Waterford area. So it's kind of interesting. We've never really crossed paths until recently. And what brings us together? YouTube of all things and reselling. Kind of interesting. But, you know, for people who don't know who you are, Scott, why don't you kind of introduce yourself and tell people kind of what you got going on YouTube and reselling?
All right. Well, I live in Simcoe to begin with. So I'm in Simcoe. The antique booth that I run out of is in Waterford. So a lot of people get that mixed up, right? But right now I'm in Simcoe. I grew up in Delhi, which is even closer to you, and went to high school and everything there. But right now I sell on eBay, Etsy. I have an antique booth, and I run a small YouTube channel. Mostly, a lot of times when I first started, what I was doing is showing the booth. Then I started showing what I was selling on eBay. And as you know, Jamie, YouTube is just so much work, and it takes away from a lot of what you're trying to do as a reseller. So I kind of just went into the live shows and tried to focus on that. But I do intend on getting back into the pre-records because they're fun as well, right? So, and I like to show what I pick and stuff. And
for sure. I think just the way you're doing your YouTube channel in general is very interesting. And I would suggest anybody, who watches my channel, you're every Sunday night, 8:00, right?
Yeah.
And we'll link everything down below so it'll be easy to find.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm actually just editing the video right now, and I thought, what better time to introduce you guys to Beaver Time than right now? On Scott's show, they like to show items that they picked up through the week, and after they show 3 items, it's Beaver Time. Let's check it out.
How many items was that?
This was 3 each.
Oh, so what time is it?
Stop! It's Beaver Time.
So everybody's gonna chime in on Beaver Time, and then that's the only reason they come here anymore. All right. So Jamie, what do you got for your beaver?
Yeah, it's just behind me here. I need a little bit of help.
It's going to be live one.
So I actually picked this up in one of my YouTube videos, and in the video I said it was going to be for myself. I've got it in a draft. It's going to be sold on eBay now, but it's a Sleeman's hat.
Oh,
really cool hat with the little beaver hit on the top. Yeah, and I find it very interesting. Like obviously you have a group of people who are always showing up. There's always lots of chat going on. Like you said, I don't know that it's huge viewership, but I do think if you keep that formula going and you can bring people in, it is entertaining. And I do think you could do really well with that, even without just like the regular what sold videos and the thrift hauls. And I think you are right when it comes to content. Like sometimes when you're making content for not so much for the what sold because you're just showing what sold, but when you're trying to pick stuff up and show people, it can feel like you're picking up stuff maybe that you wouldn't just for the video's sake. And that's what I had personally found myself having to stop doing that because I really didn't want to just have a whole bunch of stuff to sell. I needed to find stuff that was actually going to be profitable and worth my time.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'm not comfortable wearing a camera when I'm doing my negotiations. Like I don't have a problem with the camera part, but for me, like negotiation is the key for me. And trying to get the items cheap and stuff like that. And I don't want to get distracted by trying to explain what the camera's all about, my show's all about, and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
it's funny. I would say out of 10 times going up to a sale, one person might ask me what's going on with the camera. I think maybe twice in the last 3 years I've had somebody ask me not to record. And most people are generally interested in it, and it's not. I haven't found that it's a turnoff. In thrift stores, those type of stores, I don't really go in with a GoPro strapped to my book bag and the whole thing like I would with the yard sale video. I have been using just my phone and just taking little clips because I just find it in a public place like that, that feels still more awkward to me. Like I don't really know how that, you would think both would be the same, but it just isn't for me anyway. But yeah, I definitely get what you mean. It's weird kind of doing that.
Yeah, and my objective is to get the items as cheap as possible, because some things aren't going to sell. Some things are going to take a while to sell, and you don't want that money tied up, right? So, and sometimes it might be worth something here, and then by the time you get to listing it and everything else, it's dropped in price, or somebody wants a deal on it. And so I really just try to get the lowest amount, like the lowest cost possible. And I just don't want anything to interfere with that. That's all.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that is the right thing to do. I mean, obviously you want to pay a fair price, but I mean, there needs to be wiggle room for profit. And, things do, like you did just mention, things change over time. I'm just going through delisting and relisting my store, and, things have been listed for a year. The price, when you go to comp stuff, it's not the same. They're usually off by like $10. If it hasn't sold, it probably isn't worth more money. It's worth less money for sure. Because if it's worth more money, it probably would have sold already. So it is important to get it at a good price where, if it is something you're hanging on to over time, you can have that wiggle room of, making a good profit still.
Yeah. And just one more thing to add to that is when I go out like it's one thing here where I'm local. So everybody knows a Waterford antique store. So usually I'm right up front explaining I'm at the Waterford Antique Store. Everybody knows what that is. And then I'll go on from there. But I'm usually buying bulk too, right? Like I get so many times invited to and maybe you do as well. But I find just being up front and explaining what I'm doing, I get invited into their house, into the basement, into the garage. I've gone up in lofts and in the garage and barns and stuff. And they got more stuff to show once they know what I'm into. Right. So I just don't want that camera to interfere with that. Right. Like that's all. But
no, for sure.
It's usually because I'm trying to buy a lot. So usually I really got to pay attention to price on that too. But no different than anyone else. But it's just my way of doing it. That's all.
Yeah. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to do it. There's plenty of different content out there that people are just showing hauls. And there are people who are going out and showing the entire process. But you did hit a good thing there. One of the things we wanted to talk about is a location, and we're in a similar location. I believe we probably both feel like yard sales are probably the best in the area when they're available. But kind of, what do you think the pros and cons of being in a small town or, like we are basically?
It depends what you're picking for. Like I don't think I'm going to find a lot of high-end clothing or shoes. Like, for me to go out and find a nice high-end pair of Jordans, I that's not probably going to happen unless I go outside this area. You might see differently than that, but I'm not that type of picker anyway. But as far as old stuff, the antiques, the collectibles, in my mind, this place is a gold mine. There's lots of it out here. It really depends on what you're looking for too. But I mean, the old stuff you'll still find in barns. You'll find in basements, right? So I think this area is a gold mine for what I like to pick. So
yeah, and I agree. And I kind of grew up around antiques. My grandfather was a farmer, and he collected old farm equipment and glass bottles. And I'm going to say he was a little bit of a hoarder, but he also liked to flip stuff, and he always found money in things. And I think that's where I kind of got the drive or the idea that you could, get stuff super cheap and sell it, watching him. But there was lots of people like him growing up with not a lot and saved every single thing. And those things now are becoming available. We have a barn, which I think has too much sentimental value for my family, not me necessarily personally, but there's a lot of old neat stuff in there that's worth tons of money. It's just everybody, wants to hang on to it still at this point.
Yeah. And there's a lot of history in this area. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you're going to find that stuff, and it's people don't even know they have it. It's just put away in a box or in a garage, or most likely in a basement, and sometimes in behind walls too. When people do repair renovations, it's in behind walls and stuff. But that's what I love about this area is finding that old stuff. So for me, it's a pro. As far as cons, again, I'll have to go back. You're not going to find a lot of that higher end, newer stuff. I don't think, but
Sure. And I know in a lot of different conversations I've had like this, shipping's been a pretty big thing, but I think because you mostly focus on not all antique stuff, but a lot of it isn't being shipped from the booth. Obviously, those are all local sales, correct?
the antique stuff,
Yeah.
it's both. If it's small, yeah, I'll put it on eBay for sure. eBay, Etsy. A lot of the bigger stuff, like furniture, obviously is going to go in the booth.
Okay. Yeah, for
The
sure.
bigger stuff will go like I got some ship wheels. They're going to go on the booth because they're just so big, right? But there's a lot of old stuff, 1800s or late 1800s. Definitely sell them online, especially like photos and different things like that. But one thing I've been selling a couple real quickly, and I can't sell them out of the booth, is the old cast iron apple peelers. You know what I
Okay.
mean? I've sold like
Yeah,
3 of those in the last month, and I can put them in the booth for lesser price, and they just won't move, right? So there's some things that do better online, and
definitely.
some things that do better in the booth.
What do you think your percentages are? Not profit or anything. I just mean like online sales to the booth sales. Like, do you kind of have an idea of if it's 50-50 or, is it really higher on one than the other?
eBay is much higher for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the booth is kind of limited. You're limited on space. It costs, you're paying a rent, you're paying a
Yeah.
commission at the booth, so you really have to watch your prices. You're not going after the highest dollar because the longer it sits, the more it depreciates because it's costing you money to sit there. And you're kind of limited to how many things you can have. Where eBay, you can put as many things on in there as you want, and you got many more eyes. Like, you're basically worldwide if you wanted to be, right? um
Sure.
so I would say definitely eBay for sure.
Yeah.
But what the booth does do, not only does it give me an option of putting bigger stuff there, but say there's something that I picked and I looked at it and it's got a defect and I don't want to get hit on eBay, I can put it in the booth where people are going to see it. They're going to pick it up. They're going to look at it. They're going to see that. They're going to see that it's priced correctly for that, and they'll take it. Where not everybody looks at all the photos or reads all the information on eBay. So then they're going to want to send it back or something, right? So it
Yeah.
allows me to get rid of stuff differently where I'm not going to get in trouble on eBay. You know what I mean? That kind
Oh,
of
for
thing.
sure. Yeah. I mean, it's really tricky because you can sell obviously things with flaws on eBay. And I would say the majority of things that I do sell, unless they're brand new, are with flaws. But yeah, you do have to be very particular about how you point it out. And essentially you want to obviously cover your own behind, because if there's an issue with whatever, a stain, or if it's a nick out of something, you want to be upfront about those things, because people still will buy it. But if you don't say those things and somebody gets them, they're going to be upset. And then especially in Canada, and I don't know how you feel about shipping in Canada, as soon as I get a return, 9 times out of 10, I'm just going to eat it as a loss because it's just too expensive to send back.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate. I think things have got a little better. I don't know if you use eBay directly for to get your postage, or if you use Canada Post directly, or if you use a third-party company. But even shipping things out can be cheaper, but getting them back is always expensive.
Yeah. Right now I basically do all my labels through eBay.
Mm-hmm.
I find it easier, convenient, and that's just the way I do it. But yeah, I'll have to eat it too, right? So it's another reason why you have to watch how much you spend on your items, because if you spend $100 to make a $300 item and all of a sudden you have to eat that, like, you don't want to be
Yeah.
doing that too often, right? So
No, I do know some people who do pay up quite a bit for items. They're paying up for items, and making probably similar margins than I am buying, or similar to you, even buying cheaper. And you know what I mean? But yeah, but if you're paying up for items too much, it can definitely bite you in the butt way too quick, for sure. You can only do that so many times before you're just going red all the time.
yeah, and that being said, that amount of times that you have to eat your loss, just take a loss, is so rare. Like, It is so rare in my mind. Like I bought a bunch of socks for people that ride horses. You know what I mean? Equestrian socks, I guess they're called. And the guy wanted to send them back because he got the wrong size.
Okay.
Right. But immediately he went and bought the larger size. So now do you send that out to him? Because he's trying to scam you, or is he legit? So I sent it out to him and it worked out fine. Right.
Do you do buyer pays return, or it obviously depends on how they open the request, because there are ways to basically play the game. But how do you have returns set up? Because even if you say you don't accept returns, you're still going to get returns, right?
Right. So I do have it set up so I don't accept returns. But he put in a return, and I accepted it and just refunded him. And I haven't got the socks back. I heard nothing from eBay. I just filled out what the required parts are on that. And that's been about 2 weeks now. But that being said, I haven't had any issues. There's been a couple of times where people wanted a slight refund because they found a flaw. You know what I mean? So whether they're being serious or not, what do you think is fair? We worked it out, and I still made money on the item every single time. So
I mean, that's definitely the goal for sure.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to get into some BOLO items. So you can kind of set it up any way you want. I'm not sure if you want to talk about items that would be desirable for antique booths, which are like anything, can be unique to the person, or some online stuff, or a mix of both. But I'm definitely interested to know some BOLOs.
Yeah, I got a couple of BOLOs here that I was thinking about. I try to stay away from kind of like what you do. You do the clothing and the video games and stuff like that. And I know a lot of people know about cameras and stuff. I try to say something a little bit different, but these are definitely things I look out for. Probably the number one thing I got here is old, like a folk art type stuff. And it doesn't necessarily have to be old, but the older the better for me. I think value-wise in most cases too. But just things that have been made by mostly Canadiana or like Native Indian stuff. I always find that stuff interesting. You don't see it out there a lot, but when you see it, you just like, hopefully I can get this at a good price, right? So those are a couple of things there. Do you want me to keep going with more ideas, or want to?
For sure.
Another couple things here. I got. I'm gonna put on my. So one of the folk art things, you guys, if you got any viewers from out east, is paintings by Maud Lewis. Do you know who Maud Lewis is?
No, I mean it sounds familiar, but I'd be. So I probably don't.
She would be a folk art painter. She died 1970. And I think she was in her 70s, but you got to look up for Maud Lewis paintings, because one sold at Miller auctions for $350,000.
This is the Maud Lewis black truck painting. Of course, the letters that were sent were done in correspondence with the consignor. 90,000 I have on the phone. 95,000. Absentee is 90. You need to be 95, and I have it, and now 100,000. Folks, there was a CBC story. Will a Maud Lewis hit $100,000? And it has. And it has. A Maud Lewis has hit $100,000, and folks, they are only going up.
Wow.
And she made them, she used to sell them on the side of the road for like a couple of bucks. You know what I mean? In fact, the one that sold for $350,000, that was here in Ontario at Miller Auctions. The person traded it to someone who was running a restaurant for a grilled cheese sandwich.
That's great.
It's crazy stuff. So she's from Nova Scotia. They have a museum made after her, but I guarantee you will find one of these event. Well, I shouldn't guarantee that, but it's very possible to find one of those things, right? Because there's lots done. They look very almost like kids kind of drawings, but there's something to them for sure. But that would be a folk art thing too. And I wanted to mention that, but put on my glasses here. One of the things is military items.
Okay.
I look for military items. That is a huge BOLO for me, from badges and stuff. And that's another thing too. Like if they're not really overly worth much, because some are worth $10, some are worth $150, right?
Okay.
Those I'll put online. The cheaper ones I can throw in the booth, right? because I don't have to worry about shipping and all that for a couple of bucks and taking all the photos and stuff. I'll put it in the booth. Ephemera, that was one that I really like to talk about is in a BOLO, is because it's basically paper. It's stuff that is meant to be thrown away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's mostly just paper products. Some people might consider magazines ephemera and stuff like that, but I'm talking more about like, for instance, a little while ago, I did this, but I bought a bunch of letters from the 1930s, and it's all radio stations, and some are signed. The signature can be value. The letter could be value. In this case, it had all the letterhead, and it was in a mailed envelope, and the letterhead was from the radio station itself, and then it shows what city they're from. All these were from the U.S., but someone here was a ham radio operator, and they would send a letter saying, I received your signal and I listened to your show, and then they would return with these letters, and this was all in the 1930s. So 1930s was kind of the pioneer time of radio, right? Because it started in the 1920s, but 1930s it was starting to grow. So you're kind of entering the early stages of radio. So people really go nuts for that. So I've sold some for 35, 45, but I also sold some for 100, 150, 125, that kind of thing, just for one letter. So
yeah, that's so interesting to me, because I know those are things that I've seen before, and it wouldn't be something that I would have even thought there was tremendous value in. Like I said, it depends on a lot of things, but still something to look for. So that's definitely an interesting thing for sure.
Yeah, so ephemera would be a BOLO for sure. Photos, old photos, whether they're on glass, like a daguerreotype or an ambrotype, those are the earlier photos. Then I went to tintype, and then we get to like your black and white and your military, all sorts of different things that could be in photos that are interesting. Like old toys. It could be a store. Like people collect that kind of stuff. It could be a post office or something from a small town that doesn't exist anymore. Different reasons people want that stuff, right? So photos are always a great lookout, BOLO. And something that I've started to get into as of last year is books, old books. I bought a collection of books. There was over 3,000. Took me 3 days to grab them and bring them home. Filled up the truck every single time, but it hurts the back, but it's worth it. So old books are definitely, I guess it can be newer books too, but older books in good condition, they're not all going to be valuable, but there's going to be some in there that are crazy value. So
okay, and would you just do the similar? Obviously, there's no barcode on old books, so you would just look up the title and then you would look to see what edition it is. Is that kind of how you figure out value?
A little bit. So there's kind of a different, it kind of changes a little bit, but basically what you'll do is, now that I've kind of got a little bit of an idea, and probably I threw some valuable books away, but for the most part, I think I'm okay. Because when you're going through 3,000, you can't look up 3,000 books. Eventually you got to say, okay, this one's got to go, this one. So I look for older stuff. I look for stuff that maybe has a theme to it, like an arts and crafts, or I got one from I think it's 1930s, but it's on perfume. You know what I mean? So it's kind of niched, and it's old. I think I got a couple $100 listed on that right now. You look for condition, but condition doesn't necessarily mean anything. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean the most thing you have to worry about, because you're looking at books that are in the 1800s, right? But condition is important. Yeah. So Bibles, I got some old Bibles. Books are just, it's kind of all over the place, but you just kind of, I wouldn't go out and spend a lot of money on one book. But if you can get a box of books for $5 or $10, you know what I mean? And you can learn from it, or you can go and buy, and if you got the room in the house, you can buy a whole collection of books for like 10 cents a book or something like that. You know what I mean? You figure it out. Yeah. These 3,000 books I paid $1,000 for, but and I got my money back right away. So I don't know if you want to hear that story or not, Jamie, but
Yeah. No, I think I have heard it, but I think it'd be an interesting story to tell for sure.
okay. So I had one book in there that I knew had value. It was a bigger one. It was maps, and it was on Hold'em and Norfolk. It's from the 1800s, 1876 or something like that. So I knew it was around 250. It was in good condition. So I put 280 because everybody's going to come in and try to get a lower price. So I put 280. Person called me up, offered 200. I accepted it. This was on Facebook Marketplace. So he came down here. He was a book appraiser for 2 libraries and a collector. And so he wanted to come and get it. He came and got it. I told him about the collection that I had bought, so he wanted to see some books. Well, I had pulled out. It was like overwhelming because this whole basement here was just full of books. So he was like just a little overwhelmed. But I had pulled some of the ones that I thought were bigger or better out, and he started looking through them. And make a long story short, there was one book in there that I researched in it just based on the immaculate condition it was in. Figured it was around $2,000. So he goes, I'm not paying $2,000 for that book. He goes, but let's look at these books, come to an agreement, and then we'll come back to this book. So 4 books and a volume of 24 books. We come to an agreement on $1,100. And then he comes back to this book. And he goes, what do you want for this? And I said, give me $2,000 for all the books, and that included. I said, I'm good. So he basically paid $900 for that book. So I paid $1,000 for all these books, and within less than a week, I already made $1,000, got my $1,000 back, made $1,000, and now I have all these other books to sell. So it was like, okay, I got to start liking books. You know what I mean? So, but yeah,
it's so interesting. I think the only books I've really messed around with are, you mentioned Bibles, and if you can find the right ones, definitely really good. Encyclopedias, just because they're easy to look up. That's pretty much it. I mean, I've kind of steered away from books a little bit, but I mean, there's definitely value in the old ones. I just need to pay attention to that a little bit more.
Yeah. So anything on, like, I found a book on sheep, but it was from the 1800s, and it was about farmers like grading sheep and like determining the value of sheep and taking care of their sheep. Like, it was from, and I think it was like 1800s, some like late 1800s, something like that. People have interest in that. Just really kind of just weird things. I did have a book in that collection that was on witchcraft, and I just gave it away. I wanted nothing to do with it. So it was probably worth about $60 to $80, but I don't even want it. Ouija boards, that kind of stuff, stay away. But I do tarot cards. I will sell them. But overall, it was pretty good. I sold a lot of books out of the booth. I have a section in my booth just of books, but the higher end books definitely go online. So,
yeah. And I think that's probably the right place for them to go anyway. Yeah. Just like you said, a wider audience.
But they don't sell quick. They don't all sell quick. That's for sure. Some of them take a while to sell, right? So you might be sitting on them for a while, but some are going to sell quickly, and then some are just going to sell for a while. But I don't think it's one of those things you need to like keep reducing the prices. You kind of, what I do is I'll research the title, the date, and the author, and go from there. Usually ABE or A Books, however you want to pronounce it, will have something of it. So if you go into there, it'll kind of give you a price. It's all in American dollars, but you can convert it. And I mean, it's not hard to figure out. But if my condition's really good, I'll go with that price. If it's not the greatest, I'll bring it down. But it's surprising, the value of books. It's just crazy. So at least for me, anyways, I just found it interesting.
You find yard sales for a lot of these books? I know you said the large lot was from Facebook Marketplace, right? Like a big lot. But when you're just finding these books from the 1800s, like, where would you stumble across one?
So I sold them on Facebook Marketplace. How I found it is another reason that I like having the booth, is because people will come to the booth trying to sell stuff. Okay. So this particular case was another vendor who was tied up into this. He ended up being in charge of the estate, which was massive. But this was one particular house, and it was filled with amazing antiques and collectibles, like old authentic serving trays and pictures and radios and everything. And it was just filled with amazing stuff. So my thoughts were, if this book collection had anything to do with the amazing, like if in books it was as well uh, valued as much as the stuff that was in the house that I knew about, I'm like, there could be some value here. So I asked them how much they wanted for it, but that was because I had that booth. So people came to me, you know what I mean? So that was actually a private pick of an estate. So
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I know similarly, like I've had people when people in your family and friends know what you do, it does open the opportunity for those private picks, or or even I've had people reach out to me from social media who just see what I do and say, hey, like either they're looking to get out of it or they've got a whole bunch of stuff that they don't want to sell, and it's the private pick. If that was the only way you could source, I would be totally happy with that. It takes a lot of the effort out of it. You just go and you find somebody's already went through the junk, basically, right?
100%. And the private picks are 100%. And you get to learn about the backstory on some of this stuff and where it might have came from, and you can tell that it's authentic, in a lot of cases too, right? So there's just nothing better than a private pick for sure.
And how many years do you think total you've been doing this? So obviously, like a lot of us maybe started young and kind of was selling things and whatever, but when did you get really serious about trying to flip items?
So it started a weird way. Actually, my dad used to have an antique booth in the same place in Waterford, and I never paid attention to it. I always knew he did it, never went there, never had any interest really into it. Some of the stuff he brought home was kind of neat, but I never really connected myself with ever doing that, ever, whatever. It just wasn't even in the cards. And then when he passed away, his house had this stuff and we threw so much out, like, because you're kind of under the gun and trying to get things out of there and stuff like that and get the house sold. And a lot of the stuff we stored in my garage, and I don't know, just a lot of stuff we threw out. And then one day we decided to have a yard sale. And we put my sister's stuff on one side of the driveway, mine on one, and we just put dad's stuff down the middle, and everybody went for his stuff. Everybody went for his stuff. People were coming back 2 or 3 times. People were saying this is the best yard sale been for a long time. Of course, our prices were cheap because we didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of it just kind of developed. It just kind of went from there. A couple of people would talk to me about why they're buying this and stuff like that, because I just asked them, right? So,
yep.
And then it just started. We started doing some yard sales, and about 8 years ago, I guess, I got a antique booth, my first one, and then just started from there. So,
and I'm sure over the course of that, you've probably done more, better on stuff and worse on stuff. You probably don't really know what to expect when you're starting something like that. But what do you wish you could go back and kind of tell yourself when you were starting? One of the most important things you've learned along the way.
Interesting. I think one thing I definitely learned is don't be afraid to take that first offer if it's a decent one, because you don't know when that offer is going to come back. You might never get, like, one thing, I had this hockey game. I have never seen one before, and now I see them all the time, but it was an older one from the I guess from the 50s or 60s. And it was just, the guys playing hockey and stuff, right? But it was an older one. And I thought, wow, this has got to be worth lots of money, right? So I go on eBay, and they're going for, I don't know, $180 at the time or whatever. So I wanted that price, right? This person offered me $120, and I said, no, I just got it. I want to get this full price. I ended up selling it for $80 like months later. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, so, I do. I can just totally relate to that, because I feel the same way these days. I always would hang on way too long for stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not necessary. Just keep moving on. Flipping
and I
stuff.
paid $5 at a yard sale for it. So in Port Rowan, near you.
Oh yeah, real close.
Yeah. So so why didn't I just take the first offer? I don't know, but now I definitely would. So
I think the longer you do this sort of thing over time, you can see that. And a lot of times too, I'll even think of things, if maybe somebody's buying it to flip it again. And I don't really have a problem with that, as long as we're both making money in the end. It's totally fine. Yeah, it really depends on the situation. I've had a couple times where people, I'm sure you have too, on eBay, where people want to bundle stuff together and they're getting maybe a discount on shipping. You might even be kind of giving a better price. That's one of the things on Poshmark that really drives that. People can create bundles, so they might buy 10 things from you. And then when I'm looking at the things in the bundle, there'll be one or two things that I know that I maybe picked up at the Goodwill bins or for a couple dollars at a yard sale. And I'm like, you know what? Even if I throw those things in, they're going to feel like they're getting a deal.
Yep.
And really, it's really good for me too. So, I think that's definitely important to, take the deals when they're available.
I think one thing too that I'm glad that I never did, and I see a lot of people do it, but they get mad because the people won't go down on their price. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to a yard sale and people got things priced ridiculously high, I don't care. I don't care. I ain't got time. I don't want to deal with it. I just want to move on to the next one. But people will sit there and they'll get mad about it and they'll argue. I mean, that's their stuff. If they want to get that price for it, go ahead. Sometimes I'll tell them what I do. I'll leave my number. I had a guy who wanted to sell a bunch of beer taps. I give him a price for all of them. And it was a little bit of a lowball price, but I explained to him that I have to pay a commission. I have to pay rent. And then I have to make a profit, make it worth my time. So I give him an offer. And I just said, give me a call. Maybe you'll sell them all on the weekend, but if you get stuck with them, give me a call. My offer's open. And here's my number. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I never got mad at people for wanting too much money, but I see some people do that. I don't think that's, I think if you get mad at people and turn them off, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like,
yeah. No, I think you're right.
So people are just trying to get money too. So,
oh, for sure. And we live in a day where people know how to figure out what their items are worth. And that's why you can go to a yard sale and someone might tell you, well, this sells on eBay or Facebook for this much money, and that's what they want. And it's like, well, the hard part is, and I'm sure I'm not going to stand there and lecture you about what it actually sold for. Sometimes I'll show people, if it seems like we're actually trying to make a deal, I'll show them how much it might sell for on eBay, and say, like, this is how much I would give you because I'm trying to make a profit on it as well. And, sometimes that's all it takes, and, other times not. But I'm not going to stand there and like you said, try to like scream and yell and try to get the cheapest price possible. Just move on. You can ask whatever you want for your items. It's totally fine to your items, right?
Yeah. I mean, I went to one yard sale. This is the funniest one. The guy had a bunch of records, and I can sell records out of the booth. I'll put them in there. So this guy was selling records, and I said, how much for the records? And I started flipping through them. He goes, well, tell me what one you want, and I'll look them up on eBay, and I'll give you a price. I said, have a good day.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what am I going to do to that? Right. So it's just, he just laughed, and I just said, have a good day. But I don't know. That's just the way it is. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. Also, I appreciate your time. And I should have knew you're from Simcoe. I don't know. I think I just had it in my head because we talk about Waterford in the booth so often.
Everybody does that. Everybody does.
Yeah. Yeah. Really do appreciate it. And hopefully everybody can try to come to one of your lives on a Sunday night. I hope to be able to come do one again with you in November. I felt bad last weekend being Thanksgiving. I think when we originally talked, I wasn't really thinking about that. And then when push came to shove, I was cutting myself pretty close. So wasn't able to do it last weekend, but I definitely want to come back and do your show. It was a lot of fun. And I do love the format of it. And I do think, if you and Adam continue with it, shout out to Adam here as well. Too bad I should have earlier, but here at the end, we'll give Adam a shout out. He's always by your side, and it's always entertaining.
Yeah, no, Adam actually started me to sell on Etsy and eBay and stuff like that too. So he showed me the ropes right off the bat. He's been doing it for a long time. But you know what? Him and I met on YouTube as well. He did a lot of YouTube. He does a little bit now and then, but he had his own channel, and that's how we met. And he had an Apple Place hat. And I'm like, that's from Simcoe. He was wearing this hat. And I was like, hey, buddy, you from Simcoe? So, yeah, so that's funny. Small world.
Thanks again, Scott. I really do appreciate your time. And if you guys do have a few minutes, check the link out down below. We're going to link Scott's page. Check him out on a Sunday night. I really do think you would enjoy it. It's a great time, great conversation. These guys have some pretty good BOLO items they do show every week, and they always have wonderful and funny conversations. So if you guys like videos like this, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing for more content. Until next time, take care, stay safe, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.